Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Mark Garrity. I'm the Park Administrator for Recreation and Parks. And on behalf of our Director, Rick Anthony, over here to my left, and our entire department, we want to welcome everyone for coming out today and thank you again for all your support up to this point. Before we get started on this very momentous day in the history of Hancock's resolution, which between Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Morrison, you'll hear about the history in quite detail shortly, I would like to acknowledge a few folks who have helped get this process to where it is right now. Of course, I want to recognize our County Executive, Steve Shue, Delegate Derek Fink, County Councilman. I was moving on to Delegate Kipke already before I was done with you. Delegate Kipke. Senator Simon Ayer, I saw. Senator Simon Ayer. And Senator Gimeno, I believe I saw. Thank you for coming, Senator. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our volunteers. The Department of Recreation and Parks just simply could not survive without the work of volunteers, whether you're a coach, a gym monitor, one of our friends, etc. And this facility truly is run by volunteers with some help from Recreation and Parks in the county and the state. But as you see the volunteers dressed today in the period garb, you realize that they just love what they do and they make this a really special place. And I want to thank them. And I would like to acknowledge Jim Morrison, Kim Nielsen, Diane Feeney, and Dolores Reuter of the Friends of Hancock's Resolution, and Mr. Henry Schmidt of the Hancock Foundation. A project like this needs partners besides volunteers, and once we get to the point where we are today when shovels are in the ground, earth's being moved, we turn it over to a different set of professionals, the folks that build, design, and help these projects really come to fruition. So I'd just like to recognize 4 folks that are here with us today. Our project manager, formerly a Recreation and Parks engineer who retired, is to come back because he loves the men of Hancock's Resolution and the ladies of Hancock's Resolution, Rajan Nigam. Our project engineer, Ted Bocher of Rummel, Klepper, and Cole. Did I come close? Okay. Richie Upton of Reliable Contracting. Richie, I think way in the back. And Steve Montgomery of Grimm & Peterson Incorporated. I would like to acknowledge one more volunteer of our Recreation Advisory Board, Woody Bowen. Woody and his wife are regulars up here volunteering, so thank you, Woody. And with county executive staff, I believe I saw Sarah Gannon earlier. Sarah, you here? Okay, I think the who's who list of who's here is beyond belief, so I'm going to have to cut it short there. And at this time, I'd like to bring up our county executive, Steve Shue.
Good afternoon, everybody. What a beautiful Anne Arundel County day, isn't it? Boy, it's awesome. I want to begin by thanking the Friends of Hancock's Resolution for preserving this amazing artifact and for making it available to the public and for operating it in such an effective and professional manner. And I want to tell you how much we appreciate your commitment and the countless hours you put in to keep this operation going and to have made it what it is today. And it is an important amenity for our county because it gives the citizens of Anne Arundel County a window into what life was like on a farm in Anne Arundel County in the era immediately after the Revolutionary War, that very early time in our nation's history. Very exciting. As Mark alluded, this project is very much a partnership among many different organizations, including county government, especially Recreation and Parks. Appreciate all that Rick and Mark and their team do to assist here. Friends of Hancock's resolution, of course, the state of Maryland has been heavily involved. Thank you, Phil Gimeno, Senator Gimeno, for your efforts over the years, and the Maryland Historical Trust. All those people coming together to make this happen. The project itself that we're here to commemorate today is very exciting. It's the next chapter for Hancock's resolution, a new visitors center and a barn facility that will allow Hancock's resolution to stay open throughout the year and enable it to increase its educational program for our young people and our older people alike. I especially want to thank the PBA, the Pasadena Business Association. Sandy, you do such a great job. And the PBA, for those of you that aren't aware, has committed initially $20,000 for this new project to get it moving, and subject to additional funding, match funds, is going to be contributing an additional $10,000 to the project. So we should give a big round of applause to the Pasadena Business Association. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark, or our next speaker, or whatever's next on the program. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive. I just want to acknowledge three more members of county government. Barbara Polito, who is the liaison to the Friends of Hancock's Resolution. Jane Cox, with our archaeologist. And Carolyn Ryan with the Department of Recreation and Parks, who helps pull all these things together. I came to the department about 12 years ago, first in Recreation. About 10 years ago, I transferred over to Parks. And my first job at Parks was the Cultural Resources Coordinator, kind of like a little bit what Barbara does now. And my second day with this job, then Director Dennis Callahan said, "You're going to take care of the Friends of Hancock's Resolution. They're a bunch of nice old guys. Give them whatever they want." That was probably the last time you saw Dennis in that meeting. At this time, I would like to invite Mr. Henry Schmidt up to say a few words. Henry?
Marcus did an exceptional job of introducing everybody, and I'm glad that you took that off of my shoulders. But I again want to thank all the elected officials, friends, members of our organization, and every other person that's here today. It makes me feel good, and I think my ancestors would be real proud to see where their farm is today. They went through what the money situation is as of now. The idea is today we got two phases of the construction. The first phase in all construction today is to do your infrastructure, the roads, the building site plan, and the plans have been already approved and drawn that will be proposed for the new Barn Visitor Center. So after all these years, we're well on our way to accomplishing some of our goals. And of course, the next phase will be to raise funds to take and build the building center, the visitor center, and the barn. And we are hopeful that we'll have the same cooperation with the government agencies and the friends and the family and the people in the community, which will make this a pleasure, and everybody will be able to enjoy our end results. Something that wasn't mentioned, this park belonged to Historic Annapolis when we first got involved with it, and they did not do a whole lot with it. One of my cousins, Edwin Calvert, he put a lot of effort towards trying to make it go, but lack of funds was the main reason it just never took off. So in later years we come along, we start and try again. And when the county acquired this, nobody could figure out how or why, but Robert Walker, who's here today, and Janet Owens are responsible for Anne Arundel County now owning Hancock's Resolution. Before that, it was owned by Rex and Parks, and it was left in dismay and was falling apart. So we need a big hand of thanks to Robert Walker for making this be a county park, and we've moved ahead ever since. Now, to bring in the financial part of it, we have two organizations. We have the foundation, Hancock's Resolution Foundation, which is an endowment fund to support the county as we move forward. We don't expect the county to go budgeting money for us entirely to make it happen. So we had a goal in the endowment fund of raising $1 million, and then we could hire one full-time employee from our income from the endowment. And along that route, I'll read the numbers so I don't mess them up. We have $429,978 in the endowment fund at this time. And we started a separate fund at a separate bank for a building fund. And we already have, without any campaigning, we have, get my eyes so I can read it. We have $10,301.86 in the building fund. And then the other organization is Friends of Hancock's Resolution. They operate the program part of it. The foundation, I get the easy part to try to raise the funds, but Jim does the part of getting people to work here, which is a harder job than raising funds. And with that, I think that is all I have to say, and I just want to thank everybody again. And I might mention that Rick Anthony has been just a wonderful person to work with, and Barbara Polito has bent over backwards to take a personal interest in helping us in her job. And I'm glad to be here and glad to see you all here. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite Jim Morrison, the president of the Friends of Hancock's Resolution.
You stole one of your ideas from Hancock's. The Hancock, my great-grandfather was school board chairman for this end of the peninsula.
Huh?
And you're in favor of smaller schools.
Yes.
Well, I'll show you, I brought this to show you. This isn't a gift to you, because I'm trying to so you'll have to fight me if you want to get it. This picture was taken in 1898,
Oh, wow.
and this is all the classes,
Look at that.
and this is my mother.
Wow.
Was in the first grade in 1898. Wow. So your idea was not new.
That's wonderful.
We recycle everything.
That's
so
awesome.
So I just want to congratulate
Thank you
on making the right choice.
That's the nicest gift I never got.
Hey, Henry, can you take a photo? Can you just take a photo while holding the picture up? Real quick? Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
I am going to try to do a capsule of the most important things that have happened here on the land you're standing and sitting on. Maryland didn't become Maryland until 1634. Before Maryland was Maryland, in 1608, Captain John Smith mapped Bodkin Creek, the Magathie River, and the Patapsco River. 1608. He stopped in this area 2 times in 1608. I'm not going to go into any detail because we just go off on a tangent. In the 1660s, the first farming of this land was done. Late 1660s, I think it was 1668, but I'm not positive of the last. Friends, that's about 35 years of the establishment of Maryland. That's how long farming on this land has been going. In 1733, the first Hancocks were on this land. They did not own it, they leased it. And as things went, they lost the lease, but got it again. In 1785, the stone house you see behind me and the stone milk house you see behind me were built very shortly after Stephen Hancock, the builder, came back as being a soldier in the Revolutionary War. You jump ahead, oh, by the way, the house being built in 1785, that was 4 years before George Washington became President of the United States, to put that in historical perspective. Jumping ahead to 1960s, Harry Hancock died in 1962, and he willed the property to the Historical Annapolis Foundation. It's a story in itself as how this farmer in a remote area of Anne Arundel County got the idea and the will to donate 14 acres at his death to an historic society in Anne Arundel County. In 1975, this house was put on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1998, Jim Lighthizer, County Executive Jim Lighthizer, who's a historian, you know, he's now the head of the Civil War Preservation Trust, so he's got this stuff in his blood, thanks to a lady by the name of Donna Ware, who some of you know, mandated that the county would take out a 25-year lease on this property. 1989. In 1997, a group of locals who now make up the Friends of Hancock's Resolution came across the property. It was in woeful condition, and brought it to the attention in a rather unique way with John Gary. John Gary fell in love with this place. He did two things for which we'll forever be grateful. He added 12.5 additional acres to this property, 5 acres to the northeast and 7.5 acres down along Back Creek on the Bodkin, which put us back on the water. This farm wouldn't be here. You are at the end of a peninsula. You're surrounded by water. And at one time we had, when this was a 410-acre middling plantation, it was surrounded on 3 sides by water: Patapsco River, Chesapeake Bay, Bodkin Creek. So now with that 7.5 acres down here, this farm is back on the water, and maybe sometime in the future we can make it a part of our future as well as the past. The second thing that he did was that he initiated the restoration of all the structure behind me. In 2000 and 2001, $250,000 were put into the restoration of the property. $200,000 came from the county and from a couple of bond bills. By the way, I want to really point out this guy by the name of Rajan Nigam over here, because he was in charge of the restoration back then, and he's still with us now. And we love this guy, let me tell you. John Gary was county executive for 1 term. Janet Owens came in, and in 2000 and 2001, the restoration was done. $40,000 came from the Maryland Historical Trust. $10,000 came from our little Friends of Hancock's Resolution. And the restoration was so good that the Maryland Historical Trust that year gave Hancock's Resolution a preservation, special preservation award. And in your handouts, which I think most of you have, on the second page, you will find the language that that described the quality of the work that was done here. Then in 2003, a National Park Service historian by the name of William Brown visited us, and he toured the property. I was with him, and I think Dolores, 2 or 3 were with him, and he came around the house to this side, and he stopped and said, you know, I don't think you folks know what you have. And he started to wax poetic, and we said, for God's sakes, write it down, write it down. And he did, and that's the first page of what you have here. This is written and spoken by a guy who had a national perspective, not like me, a local perspective, and he wanted to call attention to later people what a wonderful thing this is. Then in 2005, under Janet Owens, the county acquired the property which is the situation we have now. In 2014, this little place became one of the sites on the Star Spangled Banner National Historic Trail. And that's for 3 reasons, and it's obviously something we don't have time to do that right now. And here we are in 2016, taking the second biggest step that we have had in the history of the modern history of the property, and that is the first biggest step was the restoration in 2000-2001. This is the next biggest step. This farm has no modern amenities at all, unless you consider a porta potty a modern amenity. It is very hard to, in a hot summer day, hate to tell you anymore, I don't know what happened to the population of the world, but they like to be in their air conditioning. They don't like to be out in the farm field. And this whole development, what we're doing here, is going to give us another level of being able to work with, we love children, they love us. If you bring the children, they bring their parents. It's a wonderful thing. We have 1 or 2 schools that we're working with right now, but we have the potential to do a lot more. The work you see going on here is the entrance lane coming in, the old entrance lane. The barn visitor center is going to be up on the platform the old barn was. I don't know if you can see the red porta potty back there, but just this side of it is a flat area. This was the main house complex, that was the barn complex, and all the other ancillary buildings over there. So we're about to make, Mark, excellent progress with your help in preparing the site for the barn and visitor center. Thank you. And by the way, the house will be open for touring after the program is over.
Thank you, Jim. Well, that concludes the formal part of our program today. I would like to invite the elected officials, our advisory board members over. We're going to walk towards the house, and we're going to do the ceremonial shovel in the ground over there. So if everybody wants to walk this way, that would be great.
Turn over some dirt.
This is about as hard as a lake shore parking lot.
We've done a lot of signs.
Toward the middle there.
Okay,
1, 2, 3. All